I was halfway through meal prepping for the week, chopping vegetables with music low in the background when the knock came. Sharp. Firm. Not a neighbor. Not a delivery. Just loud enough to raise the hairs on my arms. I wiped my hands and peeked through the peephole. My breath caught. My mother, Marie. After 20 years of silence, and standing just behind her, a man I recognized only from Facebook photos, her husband, Tim, wearing a leather jacket 2 decades too young for him. I opened the door slowly, heart thudding. "Elena," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she hadn't walked out of my life when I was 8. Her voice was syrupy sweet, rehearsed. "You look amazing, honey." I didn't answer, just stepped aside out of habit, not invitation. Tim followed her in, looking around like he was appraising the place. My apartment isn't flashy, but it's mine earned with years of 14-hour workdays and relentless saving. She sat on the couch like it belonged to her, smoothing her skirt, smiling too wide. "We've heard you've been doing well," she started. My chest tightened. I didn't ask how she knew, she already had her next line ready. "It's come to our attention you've got some savings 6 figures we heard. That's incredible, sweetie, really proud." My fingers curled around the edge of the counter. Proud? She didn't even know what field I worked in. "We're here because we're in a bit of a tight spot." Tim cut in, his voice smooth but with a bite of entitlement. "Medical bills, credit cards, just a little support could change everything." My mouth went dry. I stared at the 2 people who'd built a life without me, now sitting in my living room, casually asking me to bankroll theirs. My mother leaned forward, her smile softening, like we were bonding. "Family helps each other, Elena. You've got so much. It's time to give back." My jaw clenched. That knock had opened more than just my door. It cracked open a past I'd spent years sealing shut, and they'd walked right in like they still had a key. When I was 8, my mother packed a single suitcase, kissed my forehead like she was tucking me in for bed, and walked out. No drama, no storm, just silence and the faint click of the front door closing behind her. Dad said she needed to find herself. I guess that meant a new apartment, a new husband, and eventually, a new daughter, none of which included me. For a while, I used to wait by the window every weekend, convinced she'd drive by and wave. I memorized the sound of every car in our street, but she never came. Not for birthdays. Not for graduations, not even when I broke my collarbone falling off the monkey bars. It was just me and Dad, David Soto, a mechanic who smelled like motor oil and fresh laundry. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. He'd work 2 shifts and still show up to my science fair, grease on his knuckles, pride in his eyes. He didn't talk about her much. Just said, she made her choice, and moved on. But I couldn't. Not really. Not when every Mother's Day at school meant pretending I had someone to make a card for. Not when other girls got manicures and shopping sprees while I sat in the garage handing Dad wrenches. I learned early how to pretend it didn't hurt. I built walls, brick by brick. And behind those walls, I thrived. Scholarships, internships, promotions. I made a life that no one could touch. No handouts, no shortcuts, just grit. I stopped wondering where she was, stopped checking her barely active social media. The past was a chapter I didn't reread. I had friends. I had stability. I had peace. And for the first time in years, I believed I'd closed that wound. Until she showed up at my door like it had never happened, like she hadn't missed 2 decades of my life, and smiled like we were just picking up where we left off. Like the woman who vanished on a Tuesday morning was owed something. But she wasn't. Not anymore. The girl who waited by the window was long gone. All that remained was the woman who knew exactly what that silence had cost and who was never going to pay it again. The last time I saw my mother before she showed up at my door was 15 years ago. I was 17, standing in a black dress 2 sizes too small at my cousin Damaris's funeral. It was one of those humid Texas days where even grief felt like it was sweating. She walked in like she still belonged, heels too high, perfume too strong, and a man on her arm who didn't blink once in our direction. Greg. I didn't know his name then, I just knew I hated the way he looked at people like he was bored of all of us. She didn't hug me, didn't even say my name. Just nodded like we were ex-coworkers running into each other at the grocery store. "Elena," she said flatly, her eyes already scanning the room. I managed a brittle hi, but the air between us was ice. I remember how Greg leaned in and whispered something to her, and she laughed right there, at a funeral. That laugh snapped something in me. She didn't ask how school was going. Didn't ask how Dad was holding up. Just moved on to the next cluster of relatives, like I was an obligation she'd just checked off her list. I left early that day. I told myself I was imagining it all, that maybe she was grieving in her own way, but deep down I knew that wasn't grief, that was indifference. So when she appeared in my living room all these years later, her arm brushing against Greg's as they sipped the coffee I didn't offer them, it was like time folded in on itself. Same laugh, same entitlement. Different tactic. Greg spoke like we were old friends catching up, complimented my apartment with a smug half-smile, then casually mentioned a small loan as if we were talking about sharing Netflix passwords. He reeked of someone who'd never heard the word no. My mother nodded along, letting him take the lead like she always had with men, with decisions, with abandonment. But I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't that girl in the too-tight dress, waiting for my mother to see me. I saw her now, clearly. And I saw him too, a stranger with no roots in my life, no history, just bold enough to ask for my future like it was a favor. People think success is a ladder you climb. For me, it was more like a cliff I clawed my way up, bloody palms, torn nails, no rope. I moved out at 18 with $237 in my account and a garbage bag full of thrift store clothes. College wasn't a rite of passage, it was war. My first semester, I slept on a friend's futon in a 3-bedroom apartment stuffed with 6 other girls. I ate boxed mac and peanut butter on stale bread. My textbooks were hand-me-downs with missing pages, and I juggled 2 part-time jobs, one at the campus library, the other as a night shift receptionist at a sketchy motel where the walls were too thin and the guests were too loud. Every paycheck was survival, tuition, rent, food, repeat. I worked until my hands were numb, then studied until my eyes burned. Some nights, I'd cry in the shower just so no one would hear me. And not once did my mother call. Not to check on me. Not to offer help. Nothing. I'd hear from relatives that she was doing well, that she'd found happiness, which apparently included a luxury cruise through the Caribbean. Based on the sun-drenched selfies she posted online with Greg, she'd caption them with things like, "Living our best life," while I was calculating how many hours I needed to work to afford another week of groceries. I tried not to look, I really did, but sometimes I'd slip, late at night, scrolling through her curated life like a punishment. She always looked tan, relaxed, expensive. I remember one picture in particular, her in a white sundress, champagne glass in hand, Greg kissing her cheek. The caption read, "Family is everything." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I was her family and I'd gotten nothing but silence. No rent help, no tuition offer, no, "How are you holding up?" She vanished when I needed her most, and now she wanted a piece of the life I bled for? My struggles weren't shared. My pain wasn't witnessed, and that made every dollar in my account sacred, earned, untouchable. Back in my apartment, the silence was starting to curdle. Greg had gone back to admiring the view like he owned it, and my mother was smoothing out imaginary wrinkles in her dress. I watched them both, arms crossed, every cell in my body screaming that something was off. Then she said it. "We found out about your savings," Marie said, like she was commenting on the weather. I blinked, unsure I heard her right. "What?" "One of your cousins mentioned you've been doing well, said you were sitting on what, $120,000? She gave a little laugh, like it was cute. "That's amazing, honey." My stomach dropped. I hadn't even told close friends that number. I posted a photo last month from a hotel conference for work, standing next to the keynote speaker, holding a fancy badge. Maybe someone assumed, maybe someone bragged on my behalf, but that wasn't the point. The point was that they had come here not to reconnect but to collect. "We're in a bit of a situation," she said next, her tone softening, calculated. "Greg's medical bills have been piling up. He needs a minor surgery. Nothing major, but it's not cheap, and our credit cards are." She trailed off like the rest was too painful to say. Greg picked up where she left off, leaning forward like we were talking business. "We'd only need $25,000, he said. "That's nothing to you, right?" I stared at them, my pulse thudding in my ears. $25,000. That was 4 years of college rent. That was my emergency fund, my fallback, my freedom. I hadn't worked 60-hour weeks and skipped vacations just to hand it to a man I'd met once at a funeral and a woman who forgot I existed for 2 decades. That's not going to happen, I said. Greg blinked, surprised. My mother didn't flinch. Elena, don't be dramatic. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious. You're in a position to help. Help. That word again. The way she said it made it sound like a duty, like I was morally bankrupt if I refused. You've got more than enough, Greg added, his voice slick. It's family. But the only thing that felt familiar in this room was the feeling of being used. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing standing between me and screaming. Family? I repeated, looking at the two of them like they were actors reading the wrong lines. You think this is what family looks like? My mother tilted her head, smile fading. Elena, I didn't come here to argue. I came to ask for help. No, I said, my voice cracking. You came to cash in. You came with a price tag. You came because you think I owe you. Greg shifted in his seat. Come on, you're doing great. What's a few grand? My eyes snapped to him. You don't get to speak like you know me. My mother's voice turned cold. You've always been dramatic. You're still holding on to the past like it's some kind of badge. Your father poisoned you against me. No, I snapped. You did that all by yourself, she blinked, thrown off by the steel in my voice. I stood, unable to sit another second in that room with their entitlements sucking all the air out. You weren't there, Marie. You didn't raise me. You didn't call. You didn't send so much as a card that wasn't photocopied and signed like a tax form. And now you show up out of nowhere and want $25,000 like it's pocket change? Greg let out a low whistle. This is what success does to people, he muttered. Makes them selfish. You want selfish? I said, stepping toward the door. Selfish is leaving your kid with nothing and expecting a payout 20 years later. Selfish is stalking my bank account and calling it love. My mother's eyes flashed. You're making a mistake. You're shutting out the only family you have. You did that, I said, my voice quiet now, cold. A long time ago. I held the door open. You can leave now. They stood. Greg scoffed, muttering something under his breath about ungrateful brats, and my mother, still trying to wear that mask of maternal grace, gave me a long look like she was trying to read a page she hadn't written. You'll regret this, she said. No, I replied, not blinking. I won't, and I didn't, not for a second. I called Dad that night. My hands were still shaking, the conversation replaying in my head like a bad movie I couldn't stop watching. He picked up on the second ring, his voice the same calm anchor it had always been. Hey, kiddo, everything okay? I hesitated before answering, but the words tumbled out anyway. I told him everything, the knock on the door, the savings, the $25,000 demand, even Greg's smug little comments about how family helps family. By the time I finished, the line was silent. She really said that? He asked finally, his voice low, dangerous in a way I'd only heard a handful of times. Yeah. And she knew the exact number, Dad. 120,000. I never told anyone that. There was a long pause. I'm not surprised, he muttered. I've been hearing from a few relatives lately. Your Aunt Linda called last month, asking if you were doing well financially. Then your cousin Mark messaged me, out of the blue, wanting to know if you bought property. I didn't think much of it at the time. My stomach nodded. You think she's been fishing? I don't think. I know, Dad said. She's been sniffing around for months. I heard she even reached out to your grandmother's old friend, someone who hasn't spoken to her in years, wanted to know where you worked, how much you made. Like you're some kind of investment to cash in on. His anger was palpable, not hot and loud, but cold and focused. The kind that simmers. I spent years keeping her away from you. I blocked her calls, refused to tell her where you were, and for a while I thought I'd done enough. But she's always been like this, always looking for an angle. Do you think someone in the family told her? I asked. Probably. People love playing messenger, especially when there's money involved. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just Marie and Greg now, it was my own blood helping them breach the walls I'd built. I'm so sorry, kiddo, Dad said quietly. I never wanted her mess to touch you again. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It's not your fault. Maybe not, he said, but I'll be damned if I let her get another inch. And I believed him. We'd both spent too many years surviving her selfishness to let it win now. A week passed. I threw myself into work, tried to bury the anger under spreadsheets and deadlines, but it clung to me like smoke. I was just starting to feel like the storm had passed when it happened again. Another knock, louder this time. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. My gut told me before my eyes did. Marie and Greg. I almost didn't open it. I should have left them standing in the hallway, but some part of me, the part that still believed closure might exist, turned the handle. "We need to talk," Marie said, brushing past me without waiting for permission. Greg followed, his cologne invading the room before his words did. "You've had time to think," he said, his tone not hopeful but accusatory. And nothing's changed," I replied flatly. "You're not getting a dime." Marie's face twisted. "You owe us, Elena. Do you understand that? You wouldn't have turned out this way if I hadn't left you with your father. We sacrificed for you." I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. "Sacrificed? You walked out. That's not sacrifice, that's abandonment." "Oh, stop being dramatic," Greg cut in, pacing the room like he owned it. "You're successful now because you didn't grow up in some broken home. She left so you could have stability. And now you can't even help the woman who gave you life?" My jaw clenched. "I turned out this way because Dad broke his back to raise me, because I worked myself into the ground, because I did it alone. Don't rewrite history." Greg stepped closer, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "You're killing this family, Elena. You think you're punishing her, but you're punishing all of us. We're drowning, and you're just standing there watching." I took a step back, not out of fear, but disgust. "You keep saying family," I said, "but you're not my family." "You're strangers with expectations," Marie scoffed, folding her arms. "Fine. Be selfish, but don't come crawling back when you realize blood is thicker than money." "Blood doesn't entitle you to my life," I said quietly, "and I'm not crawling anywhere." I pointed to the door. "Get out." Greg muttered something under his breath, but they left slamming the door so hard the frame shook. The silence afterward was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was freedom pressing against the walls. And this time, I locked the door twice. The morning after their second ambush, I didn't go to work. I didn't sleep either. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, staring at the dark screen of my laptop, replaying every word, every look, every accusation, and then I did what I should have done the first time. I opened my contacts and called Dev Patel, a former colleague, now a cybersecurity attorney and one of the sharpest people I know. "I need to lock everything down," I told him, skipping small talk. "My savings, my accounts, all of it." He didn't ask why, just said, "Send me what you've got. Let's make sure no one touches your money but you." That same afternoon, we moved everything. Every cent. My $120,000 went into a new high-security brokerage account, separate from all my personal banking, two-factor authentication, new passwords, transaction alerts set to ping me instantly. Dev even helped me flag my credit to prevent identity theft and pulled a full report to check if anyone had been poking around. It was clean for now, but it was a risk I wasn't willing to let grow roots. I changed my email passwords, updated my banking logins, locked down my devices with biometric access. They wouldn't just be locked out, they'd be walled off permanently. Then I started documenting everything. Dates, times, what was said, where they showed up, screenshots of old messages, photos of them outside my building, notes from my call with Dad. It felt clinical, even paranoid, but necessary. Because if this escalated and my gut told me it would, I needed proof. Dev looked over everything I sent and responded with a single line. "You're doing the right thing. Keep a record. You may need it." That night I stared at the ceiling for hours. Not because I was afraid. I was done being afraid. But because I realized that the people who were supposed to protect me had become a threat, and this wasn't just emotional anymore, it was legal, it was personal. It was war. They wanted to use my life like a safety net. I was drawing a line in the sand. They crossed it once. They wouldn't get the chance again. It was a Wednesday. Mid-morning. I was in a meeting with the product team when I noticed a missed call from HR, then an email marked, "Urgent." My stomach dropped. I stepped out and called them back immediately. "Hi, Elena," said Sarah from HR, her tone clipped and professional. "We received a phone call from a man named Greg. He identified himself as your stepfather," he alleged. "Financial misconduct." My heart pounded. "What? He claimed you've been withholding money from your mother and accused you of financially abusing your family." The word abuse echoed like a gunshot. "I'm sorry," Sarah added quickly. "We don't entertain personal disputes, and it was clear this was a private matter, but we wanted to make you aware in case it escalates." My hands were trembling. Heat crawled up my neck. They hadn't just violated my home, they'd tried to sabotage my livelihood. Greg had called my job, my career, the one thing no one handed me. The one thing I built when everything else was crumbling. That same day, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. Slanted cursive that I hadn't seen since I was 8. It was from Marie, my mother. No return address, just my name in sharp ink. I opened it slowly, bile already rising. "Elena," it began. "I can't believe how cold you've become. You've let money rot your heart. I didn't raise you to be this cruel." I stopped reading. She hadn't raised me. She'd left me. But now, suddenly, she was rewriting the past like we were the ones who'd shared birthdays and dance recitals. As if she had any part in who I'd become. At the bottom of the letter was the real punch. "If you don't help us, I'll have no choice but to tell the rest of the family what kind of daughter you really are." It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a threat, reputation, career, legacy. They were trying to take everything I had because I refused to fund their mistakes. I sat at my desk, gripping the letter like it might catch fire. I'd already drawn the line. But now, they'd lit a match and tossed it over, and I was done playing nice. The day after the letter and the call to my office, I walked into the Orange County Courthouse with a folder under my arm and a pit of fire in my chest. I had the documentation, the screenshots, the timeline. The letter. The call logs. Dev came with me, calm and steady, and together we filed a no-contact order against both Marie and Greg. I didn't flinch when I signed it. Not this time. I wasn't the little girl left behind anymore. I was the woman drawing the final line in ink. After that, I blocked their numbers, every single one. New phones, old numbers, burner accounts gone. I locked down my social media, made my apartment access key only, and sent an email to my extended family that was direct, unapologetic, and final. It said, "I'm aware someone in this family shared private financial information about me. That betrayal has led to repeated harassment, workplace interference, and emotional damage. Going forward, I will have no contact with Marie or Greg. Please respect this boundary. If you choose to involve them in your life, I will respect that, but I won't be a part of it. Thank you." Reactions were mixed. A few cousins sent supportive texts. Some went silent. One aunt replied, "But she's still your mother." I didn't respond. Biology doesn't equal loyalty. That lesson had been carved into me twice. Dad came over that night, quiet, but present. He sat at my kitchen table and helped me write the final letter, the one I never thought I'd have to write. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was clear. You chose to leave. Then you chose to return only when it suited you. I am not your safety net. I do not owe you. This is the last time you'll hear from me. Do not contact me again. I signed it, folded it, mailed it with no return address. Then I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to finally stop patching up old wounds with new achievements. Dr. Lane was soft-spoken but firm. "You've spent years trying to prove you're worth staying for," she said. "But worth doesn't require proof," I cried. And it wasn't out of weakness. It was the sound of armor hitting the floor. 6 months later, I stood in the driveway of my new home, keys in hand. It wasn't just a house, it was mine. Bought with my own money, filled with light, peace, and things I loved. No one else's name on the deed. No one else's hand in my pocket. I got promoted to lead analyst at my firm 3 months ago. That came with a raise, a team, and a corner office I didn't think I'd ever care about, but walking into it every morning reminds me just how far I've come. I also bought my dream car. Not flashy. Just clean, quiet, and fast enough to make me smile every time I merge onto the freeway. I drive with the windows down and the music loud because I can. Because no one can take that from me. The best part? I started a small scholarship fund in my dad's name, the David Soto Perseverance Grant. It's for kids who age out of the system or fall through the cracks, kids who grow up carrying more than their share and still find a way to rise. Dad cried when I told him. He said he didn't deserve that kind of recognition. I told him he deserved more than I could ever give. I still go to therapy, still talk to Dr. Lane about grief that doesn't always announce itself and love that wasn't what I needed it to be, but now the sessions feel lighter. Healing isn't fast, but it's honest. As for Marie and Greg, I haven't heard a word. The no contact order stands. I don't check on them. I don't ask around. They no longer have a key to my mind, my space, or my story. Whatever lies they spin to the rest of the family aren't mine to correct. I know my truth, and it's this: I didn't owe them. I owed myself, my peace, my future, my dignity. Some people only show up when you have something to give. That's not love, that's a transaction. And I finally learned to stop paying the price. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.